Good morning. It is a pleasure to be in City Heights. I'm joined this morning by City Council member Sean Elo Rivera, who represents this beautiful Council District 9. Also joined by City Council President Pro Tem Stephen Whitburn, who represents District 3, and then City Council member Raul Campillo, who represents District 7. We also have two other special guest stars this morning, Catherine Johnston, Executive Director of the San Diego Parks Foundation, as well as Lisa Cuestas, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Casa Familiar. For those of you that don't know, you should know, Casa Familiar is one of our leading social service providers dedicated to uplifting residents in historically underserved communities. I'm pleased that you're all here today because we are launching our Parks for All of Us initiative to ensure that going forward, city parks in the city of San Diego are created and enhanced quickly and equitably. We've gathered here at Whiteman Street Neighborhood Park, a relatively new city park. Every San Diegan deserves a park like this one, close to home, where they can recreate on playing field, basketball courts, gym structures, a bouncy level area here. No one's getting hurt on this ground. This is good. This is a quality park in an important neighborhood, but every neighborhood needs to have this kind of opportunity. And we know that historically, many of our neighborhoods have not always gotten the amenities that they deserve. Our Parks for All of Us initiative will help us to change that. And we wouldn't be here without our hardworking city staff. So I want to give a special shout out to our Director of Planning, Mike Hansen, as well as Deputy Director Heidi Von Blum and the entire planning team. These folks have literally spent thousands of hours helping develop not just this plan, but doing the community engagement work to make sure it's representative of the views and the needs of diverse neighborhoods from San Ysidro to the San Pasqual Valley. This is a big city. That's a lot of work. And to the planning staff, thank you guys for what you have done. I also want to acknowledge our City of San Diego Parks and Recreation Director, Andy Field, and his team. It's one thing for the planning folks to plan it. Andy has to program and run it, and he and his team do an exceptional job of maintaining our beautiful city parks. So, our city's Parks Master Plan has not been updated since 1956. Dwight Eisenhower was president. Elvis Presley was on the music charts. I think it's suffice to say things have changed a bit. For some local context, San Diego's population was less than 500,000 people, a third of what it is today. This is the 1956 plan. It is just 34 pages long. These 34 pages have shaped the way that we have approached park planning in our beautiful city for 2 generations. We knew that something needed to be done to be far more extensive to meet the growing needs of our diverse San Diego. And the Parks for All of Us plan is 246 pages long, reflecting the diversity and the complexity of governing in the 8th largest city in this country. Now, what is in those 246 pages? Well, that's the important part, and let me tell you a little bit more. Importantly, this plan is far more equitable than the existing Parks Master Plan. In this plan, we propose at least 80% of citywide park development impact fees will be prioritized in park-deficient communities, with at least 50% of those dollars going to historically underserved communities for at least 5 years. And our new regional park policy that will call for the identification and designation of regional parks that are located in historically underserved communities. A new emphasis will be placed on parkland acquisition. This plan includes a goal of acquiring 100 acres of new parkland in the next 10 years to ensure that every San Diegan has the space that they need to thrive. And will enhance our commitment to open space conservation and historic resources, including strengthening our multiple species conservation program. This plan will also allow nonprofits to use public spaces to help generate revenue to fund park programming while ensuring that any commercial uses are consistent with park uses. And we have a clear path forward with this proposal. The plan lays out a series of actions needed to make sure that it is implemented successfully. I know I speak for all the council members who are here with me today. A plan is not enough. We have to be able to implement, make it actionable. This team is committed to action, as am I, and that's reflected in this plan. We've included measures to ensure that it is equitable and that public participation in the park development process is key. As someone who was present for the development of this particular park, I know how important it is to make sure that people who are in the community have the ability and the right to participate. That is preserved in this plan. It also includes a new Citywide Trails Master Plan, which I know many of our community park supporters have asked for. This new plan is dramatically improved over the existing master plan, and it is the result of input from San Diegans like you. This, as I mentioned when discussing the planning department earlier, has included multiple public hearings, more than a dozen workshops, pop-up events, and stakeholder interviews. Now, everyone, no matter their background, their identity, their ability, or their address, deserves to have easy access to high-quality parks and the benefits that they provide. We certainly have seen in the last year how important parks are for quality of life for all of us. Historically, there was little incentive for developers to invest in parks where they're needed the most, and as a result, many of our residents have been left behind. This new Parks Master Plan will get those inequities right, and let me say that one more time. This new Parks Plan will right those inequities and help create a better city for all of us. So that's enough from the mayor now. I want you to hear from three of my partners in this, as well as two of our community partners as well. I'd like to hand it over now to the council member for the district we're in, Councilmember Sean Elo Rivera. I'd share with you that Mr. Elo Rivera will be adding an additional exciting announcement to the Parks Master Plan and what that will mean specifically here in City Heights in Mid-City. Councilmember?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you so much for leaning into this project. It was carried over from the previous administration. I think the version of the Parks Master Plan the mayor just outlined better reflects the values and concerns of our city. I'd also like to thank my colleagues, Councilmembers Whitburn and Campillo, as well as Lisa Casafamillar and Catherine at the San Diego Parks Foundation for making the trip to District 9. It's so great to welcome you to City Heights, and it's an honor to have the Parks Master Plan announced right here in the 9th District. I'd also like to thank the Planning and Parks and Rec departments. I know this has been a multi-year effort, and I appreciate all the work that they've put into it, the many questions you've answered from our team. We do truly appreciate your work. Park access has been a long-standing racial and social justice issue throughout San Diego communities. In March, the City Council Environment Committee received a presentation from the San Diego Foundation about inequitable access to parks and open space, which highlighted the need to invest more equitably in our park system. Every person in every neighborhood should have access to quality parks. Sadly, decisions of the past have resulted in unacceptable disparities in who and what neighborhoods can enjoy the benefits of San Diego's parks. In fact, the current system compounds those inequities by driving more and more money into neighborhoods that, quite frankly, don't need it as much. The Parks Master Plan lays the foundation for a more just future by prioritizing communities with the greatest need. First and foremost, I am super excited to announce a huge milestone that's been a community priority for a very long time. The Parks Master Plan proposes to designate the Chollas Creek watershed as a regional park. Chollas Creek runs through many of San Diego's most underinvested and under-resourced neighborhoods, especially when it comes to parks. And it was previously the city's only watershed without a regional park designation. Advocates and stakeholders like Groundwork San Diego, the Environmental Health Coalition, and the many organizations of the Community Budget Alliance, and so many others have for years called on the city to designate Chollas Creek a regional park. This designation will allow the city to commit staff to developing a comprehensive vision for the watershed and ultimately invest more resources in it. I am deeply grateful for the leadership of Mayor Gloria for stewarding this landmark initiative through his administration. Secondly, the revised model for collecting and using development impact fees per park investment is much more fair and equitable. At least 80% of the new citywide park development impact fees will be dedicated to park-deficient communities, and at least 50% of that will be dedicated to the city's communities of concern. That is a significant commitment to addressing inequities and deficiencies in our park system. We've talked a lot about the need for intentionality in addressing inequity, and this plan does that. These are just a couple of the reasons why I believe the Parks Master Plan will be a catalyst for social and racial justice by ensuring quality parks and recreational spaces for all of us. One final note. It was about 4 years ago that the park that we are standing in today was finally built and open to the public. In that time, it's been a great resource for hundreds of families in this area, families that represent the diversity of City Heights and our city as a whole. It's provided countless memories for a new generation of children and parents. I'm grateful that we are taking significant steps to develop more parks such as these in the communities that need them most. Thanks again to Mayor Gloria, your staff, and all the advocates for developing this important document. And thank you for being here. I'd like to introduce my colleague, Councilmember Whitburn, to provide some more comments on behalf of Council District 3.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Elo Rivera. Thank you, Mayor Gloria. Good morning, everybody. It is really great to be with you this morning. Let me start by thanking the many San Diegans, including a number who I see here with us today, who have provided input on this plan as it has gone through the public process. This has been a lengthy process with a lot of public engagement, and the input from the community has made this plan better. I also want to thank our city staff for incorporating public input into this plan. As we plan for housing and as we plan for economic growth, we also need to plan for our parks. It is important to our quality of life to have open spaces for recreation or just to relax, especially here in San Diego, where the weather allows us to enjoy our parks year-round. Parks are good for our health, and parks are good for the environment. I'm glad this plan calls for adding 100 acres of parks in the next 10 years, as the mayor mentioned. Ideally, everybody has a park just a short distance away from them. Some of San Diego's best open space is in our canyons. They are great escapes from the urban environment, and they provide vital habitat for plants and animals. And I am pleased that this process is creating a canyons master plan as well. A key element of this plan is that it will help ensure that money collected for parks is spent on parks. Parks can be expensive to create and to maintain. Parks require the funding to implement them, and this will help ensure that those resources are available for our parks. It's also important, as has been mentioned repeatedly this morning, that this master plan emphasizes equity in the addition of park space. Funding will be focused on park-deficient areas and communities of concern. Every San Diegan in every corner of our city should enjoy the benefit of having a park nearby. I'm also glad that the public will continue to be engaged in this process. People will have a say in the development of their parks in their communities. I think we all make better decisions when we consult with our neighborhood residents. This plan will be reviewed by the Park and Recreation Board and by the Community Planners Committee. I look forward to this plan coming before the City Council's Public Safety and Livable Neighborhoods Committee. And I again want to voice my appreciation to all the community members and the city staff who have contributed to it. And now I'd like to introduce my colleague from the 7th District, Councilmember Raul Campillo.
Thank you, Council President Pro Tem Whitburn. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here in District 9. Thank you, Councilmember Elo Rivera, and thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, for this amazing plan and for inviting me here to be part of this exciting announcement. It should come as no surprise that with this new council and with this new mayor, who have shown in ways big and small that investments in equity motivate us every day, that something that has gone 65 years without being re-examined is about to be modernized, expanded, and put simply, finally done right. Coming out of the pandemic, we know that our citizens want and need more physical, social, and educational opportunities for their children, and this Parks Master Plan is an important step towards that goal. Mr. Mayor, I'm excited to work with you and your excellent Parks and Recreation staff to finalize the city's first Parks Master Plan since 1956. The COVID pandemic has truly underscored both the importance of keeping a healthy body and the need for open-air recreation spaces and opportunities in every single neighborhood, so I'm very glad that this has been made a priority. Part of an economic and societal revitalization that puts people first is parks and recreation access. And just over the weekend, the mayor and I stood together in District 7 to open a new tot lot in Tierra Santa. And before he and I showed up, the place was packed with children and parents, but most importantly, very big smiles to show it was well worth it. The mayor, Councilmember Elo Rivera, and Council President Pro Tem Whitburn want to see that everywhere in our city, regardless of your zip code. Since 1956, we've created the interstate freeway system, but no new Parks Master Plan. 2 states have joined the union, but no new Parks Master Plan. We've seen the Cold War end. As Mayor Gloria noted, we've seen our population more than triple from about 350,000 to 1.4 million, but no new Parks Master Plan. Richard Nixon was the vice president, but no new Parks Master Plan. It is time for a new Parks Master Plan that tells everyone in our city that no matter what neighborhood you live in, you will be near a quality location to exercise with your friends and your family and your children, and we need it this year in 2021 so that we have a park system for all of us. And with that, I'm pleased to introduce Lisa Cuestas, the CEO of Casa Familiar.
Good morning, everyone. And thank you, council members and mayor. That one's tough to follow. They had some good ones there. I'm here today, and I'm glad we're in a park that was built, kind of given some love about 4 years ago, because that's what I wanted to share. A story in San Isidro of a park that was long overdue, that did not find itself on anybody's priority list. And it looked like this. It was basically a big sand pit. And for years and years and years, that's all that many families and children had accessible to them. And so I want to bring the message of I'm hopeful that this new plan understands and can share the story of these small urban parks. These small parks have just as much value as a 8-acre park that San Isidro has also been waiting for about 20, 30 years. It's been on the books. It's called Bayer Park. Hopefully this year we'll begin to change that. But this little park was brought to the attention by a resident who was tired of, Janet Gaitan, was tired of taking her niece to a sand pit, and started to talk to neighbors, started to mobilize neighbors, started to talk to Casa Familiar, and said, can we do something? So we started to raise some funds. We raised $245,000, and we organized and advocated for 4 years. We worked with the county, we did our own fundraising, we worked with community, and then the city of San Diego was able to identify CDBG dollars. It now looks like this, and it is the most hoppin' park in San Isidro, but it happens to be one of the smallest ones. And it should not be that hard. It should not take that much time, energy, and effort from a community who happens to be that park in one of the lowest income census tracts in the city of San Diego. It shouldn't be that hard. So I am hopeful that when we move forward and when we talk about equity, we understand that these small neighborhood parks are just as valuable as our big parks, that those need to get built too. But we need to make sure that when we talk about equity, we're not disguising it to move an agenda, that we're understanding that those impact fees and those dollars do need to go first. Timing is a factor in equity. Those dollars, that investment needs to go to communities who have not been invested in and been historically disinvested in for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So I'm hopeful, and I thank you for pushing this forward and making it a priority. And with that, my colleague, Catherine Johnston, who is the executive director of the San Diego Parks Foundation, is gonna help wrap it up.
Thank you, Lisa, and it's definitely a bit challenging to go last after the most dynamic political and community leaders in our community, but I think I can't express how thrilled and honored I am to be here today. If you look at the park that we're standing on today, these types of parks, to Lisa's point, are so important to our communities, but would not be possible without modifying the Parks Master Plan and the funding sources, the financing strategies that the city's employed have allowed insidious inequities to persist in our community. Parks, I agree, sir, because parks, you know what parks can do for a community? They add safety, they add joy, they add the things that mothers and families need to have a high quality community. And this Parks Master Plan represents, it's not just a plan, it's just a document, it represents more than 6 decades of underinvestment in parks in our communities. It's an acknowledgement by our city's leaders that we need to change what we're doing in our communities to ensure that we have equitable access to parks. This is transformative. And I want to thank Mayor Gloria, and I want to thank the political leaders who are invested in this effort, because this is just the beginning. We're going to be here to help you find implementation strategies to build parks in all of our communities so that mothers and families and dads and sisters and brothers have the type of community assets that we need to have high quality, safe, and thriving communities. So with that, I just want to thank Mayor Gloria. I want to thank the Parks and Rec and Planning team. And I just want to thank everyone for being here and acknowledging how important this effort is for our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. I appreciate Catherine and the Parks Foundation for the work they're doing. That's also an innovation that's happened since 1956. We now have a nonprofit partner who in a very short amount of time is already making a tremendous impact on our parks. You know, whether it's the new Wi-Fi at many of our locations or their partnership for our Summer for All of Us programs that we are instituting this summer to make sure that our kids have a full, robust, safe summer. Their partnership has been tremendous. And Lisa, I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the important work that Casa Familiar does generally, but their partnership at the convention center as we've been working with our migrant youth at that location. I appreciate all the many ways that you guys touch our community in the positive ways you do it. Let me just wrap up by saying, if you need any better reality or illustration of what we're trying to accomplish here, you look at these two static displays to recognize what we're discussing and what Lisa, I thought, really drove home well. You have basketball courts in two different parts of our community that look radically different. We have to start addressing how we undo that. And that when you have play sets, the children in one community should have as nice of a play set as the other. And yet we know that's not the truth today, but we can do something about it. And this Parks Master Plan is intended to do precisely that. We got a lot of work to do. There's a lot of needs. The foundation's going to help us raise a lot of money, hopefully. Maybe some infrastructure dollars from the federal government, maybe some help from the state. But we have to have a plan that actually puts this forward in a strategic way that addresses the realities of our changing community, one where we're growing bigger and denser, where communities are rightly asking, as we build more housing, where is the infrastructure going to come from? Well, we have affirmative answers for that. Parks are important parts of our communities. This mayor and this council gets it. This is what we're trying to solve. How we make sure that we have more equitable communities is answered by this plan. And as Council President Pro Tem Whitburn mentioned, this will now undergo a public review process. This will be before the City Council, hopefully this summer. And hopefully we'll soon have an adopted plan that allow us to set about doing the work of investing in every one of our neighborhoods to make sure that every San Diego resident has a quality park within walking distance of them. Thank you all so much for being here today. Be happy to do one-on-ones with anyone who has questions. But again, thank you for helping to spread this information out to San Diego. Parks are an important part of our city, and they're about to get a lot better because of this proposal. Thank you all for being here today.